The wind howled like a banshee, clawing at the ancient stones of Ballygally Castle. Rain lashed against the window panes, blurring the lights from the village below into a hazy, shimmering constellation. Inside, the wedding reception was in full swing, laughter and music echoing through the grand hall. But I couldn't shake the feeling of unease that had settled over me the moment I stepped through the castle's imposing doors. Perhaps it was the stories. Whispers of a ghost, a bride trapped within these very walls, her mournful wails echoing through the corridors at night. Or maybe it was the castle itself, its imposing gray facade and labyrinthine corridors steeped in centuries of history, secrets, and sorrow. I excused myself from the revelry, seeking a moment of solitude in the castle's dimly lit library. As I browsed the shelves, my fingers tracing the spines of ancient tomes, a chill snaked down my spine. The air grew heavy, the scent of dust and damp stone thick in my nostrils. A sense of dread, primal and suffocating, washed over me. Turning slowly, I saw her. A figure shrouded in white, hovering at the edge of the flickering lamplight. Her face was obscured by a veil, but her eyes... those eyes burned with an icy fire, filled with an anguish that transcended centuries. My breath hitched in my throat, my heart pounding against my ribs like a trapped bird. I wanted to scream, to run, but my limbs were frozen, my voice caught in my throat. The figure glided closer, her spectral form rippling like heat haze. I could feel her icy breath on my skin, smell the faint scent of lavender and decay. Then, as quickly as she appeared, she vanished. I was left alone in the oppressive silence, the echo of her presence lingering in the air. I stumbled out of the library, my mind reeling, my senses overwhelmed. Back in the hall, the celebration continued, oblivious to the chilling encounter I had just experienced. But I couldn't shake the feeling that I had witnessed something truly horrifying, something that would forever haunt my dreams. As the night wore on, I found myself drawn to the window, my gaze fixed on the imposing tower that loomed over the castle. It was there, in the highest room, that the ghost was said to appear every night, reenacting her tragic fall. As the clock struck midnight, a sense of foreboding washed over me. I couldn't ignore the pull any longer. I had to see for myself. Slipping away from the festivities, I made my way through the deserted corridors, my footsteps echoing in the oppressive silence. The air grew colder as I climbed the winding staircase, the stone walls damp and clammy against my touch. Finally, I reached the tower room. The door creaked open, revealing a sparsely furnished chamber, its only source of light the moon filtering through the narrow window. And there, standing by the window, was the ghostly figure. Her veil had lifted, revealing a face contorted in a mask of terror, her eyes wide with fear and despair. She began to move, her form gliding towards the window. I watched in horror as she climbed onto the ledge, her body swaying precariously in the wind. Then, with a blood-curdling scream, she plunged into the darkness below. I rushed to the window, my heart pounding in my chest. But there was nothing there. Only the wind howling and the rain lashing against the stone walls. I sank to my knees, trembling, the chilling realization dawning on me. I wasn't just a witness to this tragedy. I was somehow connected to it, bound to it by a force I couldn't comprehend. And as I stared out into the stormy night, I knew that I was no longer just a guest at Ballygally Castle. I was a prisoner. Sleep was a cruel mockery that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her. The spectral bride, her face etched with terror, plummeting from the tower window. The rhythmic crashing of the waves against the cliffs below morphed into the echo of her screams, a constant reminder of the horror I had witnessed. Dawn painted the sky in hues of gray and purple, offering little comfort. I rose, feeling the weight of the castle's oppressive history bearing down on me. Determined to understand what I had seen, I began to explore the castle with a renewed sense of urgency. I delved into its dusty archives, poring over ancient documents and faded portraits, searching for any mention of the ghostly bride. The castle staff, a peculiar mix of stoic and superstitious, offered little help. Their evasive glances and hushed whispers only fueled my growing unease. It was as if they knew something I didn't, some dark secret they were desperate to keep hidden. Days blurred into one another. The wedding guests departed, leaving me alone in the echoing halls. I felt like a prisoner in a gothic fairy tale, trapped in a place where the line between reality and nightmare was blurred beyond recognition. One afternoon, while exploring the castle's grounds, I stumbled upon a hidden garden, overgrown with weeds and shrouded in an unnatural stillness. A crumbling stone fountain stood at its center, its waters long since dried up. As I drew closer, a bone-chilling gust of wind swept through the garden, carrying with it the faint scent of lavender and decay. Suddenly I saw it, a glint of metal half buried in the earth. Kneeling down, I brushed away the dirt to reveal a small silver locket. It was tarnished and worn, but I could make out an intricate inscription. "Forever yours, Isabella." My blood ran cold. This was her locket, the one she was said to have been wearing the night she died. As I held the locket in my hand, a wave of dizziness washed over me. Images flashed through my mind. A young woman with fiery red hair, laughing in the sunlight. A shadowy figure locking her in the tower room. A desperate struggle, a scream echoing through the night. The visions were so vivid, so real, it felt like I was reliving Isabella's final moments. I stumbled back, dropping the locket as if it were burning hot. The ground beneath me seemed to sway, the world tilting on its axis. Then, just as suddenly as it began, the sensation passed. I was left trembling, my heart pounding in my chest. The locket lay in the dirt, a tangible link to the tragic past. I knew then that I had to uncover the truth about Isabella's death. But as I reached for the locket once more, a voice whispered in my ear, cold and menacing, "She was not the first, and you will not be the last." I whirled around, but there was no one there. Only the wind rustling through the leaves and the ominous silence of the forgotten garden. Fear gripped me, cold and suffocating. I was no longer just an observer in this haunting tale. I was a participant, caught in a web of ancient secrets and deadly curses. And I had a terrifying feeling that my time was running out. The locket felt heavy in my palm, a cold weight pressing against my skin. I clutched it tightly, a strange mix of fear and determination swirling within me. Isabella's story was no longer just a ghost story, it was a mystery begging to be solved. Driven by this newfound purpose, I sought out the oldest member of the castle staff, a groundskeeper named William who had served at Ballygally for over 50 years. He was a man of few words, his face etched with the lines of time and weathered by the harsh coastal winds. At first he was reluctant to speak, his eyes filled with a wary suspicion. But as I showed him the locket, a flicker of recognition crossed his face. He led me to a secluded corner of the castle, away from prying eyes and curious ears. "The stories they tell you about Lady Isabella, they're only half the truth," he began, his voice a low rumble. "There's more to it, a darkness that's been festering in this castle for centuries." He recounted a tale of forbidden love, betrayal, and a family consumed by greed. Isabella, he said, was not the first bride to die within the castle walls. She was merely the latest victim in a long line of tragic fates. According to William, the castle was cursed by a spurned lover, a woman who had been wronged by the original lord of Ballygally. In her dying breath, she vowed that no bride would ever find happiness within those walls. Her curse, it seemed, had manifested in a horrifying way, a spectral presence that drove the brides to madness, culminating in their tragic demise. "But why?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why show me these things? Why make me relive her death?" William's gaze bore into mine, his eyes filled with a chilling knowing. "The curse doesn't just haunt the brides," he whispered. "It chooses them, it draws them in, binds them to its dark purpose." His words struck me like a physical blow. Was I chosen? Was I destined to become another victim of this ancient curse? A wave of nausea washed over me, the castle walls seeming to close in. "There's more," William continued, his voice barely above a whisper. "The ghost. She doesn't just reenact her death, she's searching for someone to take her place." My blood ran cold. Was Isabella trying to warn me? Or was she trying to lure me to my doom? Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream pierced the air, shattering the tense silence. It came from the tower room, the same room where Isabella had met her end. William and I exchanged a horrified look. The scream echoed through the castle, sending shivers down our spines. We rushed towards the tower, our footsteps pounding against the ancient stone steps. As we reached the top, the door to the room swung open, revealing a scene of utter chaos. Furniture was overturned, tapestries ripped from the walls, and a shattered mirror lay on the floor, its shards reflecting the moonlight in a macabre display. And there, hovering in the center of the room, was the ghostly figure of Isabella. Her veil lifted, her face contorted in a mask of rage. But this time there was something different. Her eyes, once filled with fear and despair, now burned with a malevolent intensity. And her lips formed a single, chilling word, "You." I was frozen in place, my heart pounding in my chest. I knew that I was the one she was looking for, the one she had been waiting for, but I didn't understand why. What did I have to do with her tragic death? Isabella's eyes locked onto mine, her gaze piercing and unsettling. A strange energy flowed between us, a connection that I couldn't explain. Then, with a swift movement, she vanished, leaving behind a trail of swirling mist that slowly dissipated into the air. William approached me, his face pale and drawn. "She's chosen you," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "You're the one who will break the curse." I was stunned. Break the curse? How was that possible? I didn't have any powers, any special abilities. I was just an ordinary woman trapped in a centuries-old mystery. "You're not ordinary," William continued, his eyes fixed on mine. "There's something within you, something that connects you to Isabella, to the curse itself." I didn't know what to say. I was too overwhelmed to process the information that William was sharing with me. I was just a pawn in a game I didn't understand, a pawn that was about to be sacrificed. But I wasn't going to give up without a fight. I was determined to break the curse, to free Isabella's soul from its eternal torment. I was determined to save myself. With William's help, I began to delve deeper into the history of Ballygally Castle, searching for any clues that could help me understand the curse and break its hold. I learned about the original lord of the castle, a cruel and tyrannical man who had wronged many people, including the spurned lover who had placed the curse. I also learned about the other brides who had died within the castle walls, all of them driven to madness and despair by the same ghostly presence. Their stories were chilling and heartbreaking, but they also gave me hope. If they could break free from the curse, so could I. As I continued my research, I discovered a hidden passageway that led to a secret chamber beneath the castle. Inside, I found an ancient artifact, a relic from the time of the original lord. I knew that this object held the key to breaking the curse, but I didn't know how to use it. I sought out William's help once again, but he was nowhere to be found. He had disappeared, leaving me alone with the artifact in my hands. I felt a surge of fear and uncertainty, but I also felt a flicker of hope. I knew that I had to try. I held the artifact in my hands, closing my eyes and focusing on my intention. I wanted to break the curse, to set Isabella and myself free. I chanted a silent prayer, hoping that it would reach her, that she would hear my plea. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from the artifact, engulfing me in its brilliance. I screamed, my eyes squeezed shut, expecting the worst. But when I opened them again, the light had vanished, leaving me standing in the empty chamber. I looked around, my heart pounding. Had it worked? Was the curse broken? I couldn't be sure. But I felt a sense of peace, a sense of closure that I hadn't felt in a long time. As I made my way back to the castle, I knew that my journey was not over. I still had to find a way to leave Ballygally, to escape the haunting presence that lingered in its shadows. But I also knew that I was no longer alone. I had found an ally in Isabella, a friend in the darkness, and together I believed that we could break free from the curse that had trapped us for so long. The castle felt different after my experience in the secret chamber. The oppressive weight that had been bearing down on me seemed to have lifted, replaced by a cautious sense of hope. Even the shadows that danced in the flickering candlelight seemed less menacing, as if Isabella herself was watching over me, a silent guardian against the lingering darkness. But William's disappearance troubled me deeply. Had he been taken by the curse? Or was there another explanation, something more sinister at play? I couldn't shake the feeling that I was still missing a crucial piece of the puzzle, a vital clue that would unlock the truth about Ballygally's tragic history. Driven by a renewed sense of urgency, I returned to the library, determined to scour every book, every document, for any mention of William or the curse. Hours turned into days, the silence of the castle broken only by the rustling of pages and the crackling of the fire in the hearth. Then, tucked away in a forgotten volume, I found it, a faded inscription, barely visible beneath a layer of dust. It spoke of a hidden room, a sanctuary where the lord of the castle would retreat during times of turmoil. The inscription mentioned a secret passage, accessible only through a hidden door in the library itself. My heart pounded with excitement. Could this be the key to unraveling the mystery? With trembling hands, I searched the walls, tracing my fingers along the shelves until I felt it. A slight indentation, barely noticeable to the touch. Pressing against it, I heard a faint click, and a section of the bookshelf swung inward, revealing a narrow passageway. Taking a deep breath, I stepped into the darkness, the scent of damp earth and decaying wood filling my nostrils. The passage was narrow and claustrophobic, the air thick with the weight of centuries. As I moved deeper into the unknown, I felt a growing sense of unease, a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. Suddenly, the ground beneath me gave way, and I plunged into the darkness. I landed with a thud, my breath knocked out of me. Disoriented, I struggled to my feet, my hands reaching out to steady myself. As my eyes adjusted to the gloom, I realized I was in a small, circular chamber. A single torch flickered on the wall, casting eerie shadows that danced and writhed around me. And in the center of the room, chained to the stone wall, was William. His face was pale and gaunt, his eyes wide with fear. He looked at me with a mixture of relief and despair. "You found me," he croaked, his voice hoarse. But it's too late. Before I could ask what he meant, a figure emerged from the shadows. It was the ghostly bride, Isabella, but her form was different. Her eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity, and her features were contorted in a mask of pure malice. "You cannot escape your fate," she hissed, her voice echoing through the chamber. "You are mine now." I felt a surge of terror, my instincts screaming at me to flee. But I couldn't leave William to his fate. I had to find a way to save him, to break the curse once and for all. But as Isabella advanced towards us, her spectral form shimmering with malevolent energy, I realized the horrifying truth. The curse wasn't just about the brides. It was about something far more sinister, something that had been lurking in the shadows of Ballygally Castle for centuries, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. And I, the unwitting pawn in its twisted game, was about to become its next victim. The torchlight flickered, casting long, dancing shadows that distorted Isabella's already grotesque form. Her laughter echoed through the chamber, a chilling sound that grated against the stone walls. It wasn't the mournful wail of a heartbroken woman anymore, but a triumphant cackle that sent shivers down my spine. "You misunderstand," she hissed, her voice dripping with venom. "I was never the prisoner, he was." She gestured towards William, who cowered against the wall, his eyes wide with terror. He, and all the men who came before him, trapped by the curse, forced to play their part in this macabre spectacle. My mind reeled. It wasn't the brides who were cursed, but the lords of Ballygally. They were the ones forced to relive the horror, to perpetuate the cycle of death and despair. But why? What was the purpose of this twisted game? Isabella glided closer, her spectral hand reaching out to caress William's cheek. "The curse demands a sacrifice," she whispered, her voice a chilling caress. A bride to appease the darkness, to fuel its power. Suddenly I understood. The brides weren't driven to madness. They were chosen, lured to their deaths to sustain the curse, to keep the lord of the castle trapped in his eternal torment. And I, the latest in a long line of victims, was meant to be the next sacrifice. But I refused to be another pawn in this game. I wouldn't let Isabella win. I wouldn't let the darkness consume me. I had to fight back, for William, for myself, for all the brides who had perished within these walls. Remembering the artifact I had found, I reached into my pocket and pulled it out. It was a small silver amulet engraved with ancient symbols. I didn't know how it worked, but I knew it was my only hope. Holding the amulet aloft, I focused all my energy, all my will, into it. I thought of Isabella's pain, of William's fear, of all the lives that had been destroyed by the curse. And I poured all that emotion, all that anger and despair into the amulet. The chamber began to shake, the torchlight flickering wildly. Isabella screamed, her form flickering and distorting. The air crackled with energy, and a blinding light erupted from the amulet, filling the room with its brilliance. When the light subsided, Isabella was gone. The chains that had bound William to the wall fell away, and he slumped to the ground, weak but alive. The chamber was silent, the only sound the echo of my own ragged breathing. We had done it. We had broken the curse. As we made our way out of the hidden chamber and back into the castle, I felt a sense of profound relief. The weight of centuries had been lifted, and Ballygally Castle was finally free from its dark legacy. But as we emerged into the main hall, a chill ran down my spine. The castle was silent, eerily so. There was no sign of the staff, no sound of life. It was as if everyone had vanished. And then I saw it. Scrawled across the wall in what appeared to be blood, a single chilling message: "The darkness never truly dies, it merely waits." My blood ran cold. The curse may have been broken, but something else remained, something ancient and malevolent, lurking in the shadows of Ballygally Castle. And as I stared at the blood-red message, I knew that my journey was far from over. The darkness was still out there, waiting for its next victim. And I had a terrifying feeling that it wouldn't be long before it found me.